This is the first time since 1991 that I've stepped foot back in this hotel right before I reported the basic underwater demolition SEAL training a mile and a half away from here. So I will tell you a couple of things that happened on that beach down there. And we'll put you back in the water together. So, but let's talk for a moment. You know, you're going to get this book, and I want to set a couple of rules for today. I'd much prefer you taking some time, writing some notes of a couple of questions you have. I will be a complete open book from everything I share. The only thing I don't ask is please don't ask about, like, oh, how many people did you kill? We don't like going down that route. But I want you to know you're going to get a book. It's over there. At the end of this presentation, there's a QR code. You can download the presentation. I built this for you. This is a one-shot for me. First time I'm giving you this presentation. This book and the conversation I want to have with you is really talking about what John mentioned, these 3 levels of leadership. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're standing in front of a dead calm reflection pond. And you take a pebble, and you drop that pebble right into the water. And when you drop the pebble, it agitates the water, and it ripples out 3 rings, okay? That pebble is you. That's you taking an action. Okay, that's you leading. Rule number 1 is everyone is a leader. Somewhere along the way, we kind of missed the boat here and started to think like, oh no, I'm not ready for that yet. I just need to be managed first. Whoever wanted to get out of high school or college and go, yes, I can't wait to be managed? No, you see, the first level of leadership has to do with leading you. That's that first initial agitation in the pond, that ripple. Now that ripple effect takes to a larger ripple, and that is the leading of the team. I do a lot of executive coaching, and every once in a while I'll get hired and I'll be dropped right in to deal with some executive. And the first comment might be, you're going to help me out. My team sucks. Huh. Well, why do you think that is? Whoop. The coach's job really is to hold the mirror up. That's the first stop, right? You see, a team is nothing more than a reflection of its leader. And then when you move past the team, well, then you're really at a team of teams. It's the organization. Now, when we're looking at the organization, one of the key things we're evaluating is the culture. Every organization has 2 cultures. Aspirational, you know, the one that's in Carrera Marble in your lobby, core values, manifestos, credos, that's aspirational. And then there's the actual. Every leader's job is to close that gap. During the TED Talks this morning, you had Josh Levine up here, and he used a quotation that's actually from Peter Drucker originally, and I couldn't agree more with Josh. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But if you think about how it all works, it always starts with the individual first. And if you're thinking for a moment, well, I'm not really the leader, it's not the way my organization is set up, that's not true. That's a cop-out. And I want you to appreciate, this will be our table of contents today, but we're really going to stick, I'm going to give you a little snapshot into leading yourself and leading teams. And when I think about leading ourselves, we're going to talk about mindset, in particular, in getting your mind right. You know, there's very few things we can control. Very few. But the things that we can, how we think, where we focus, and what we believe in, that can change our destiny. But first, let me set the stage with a little story. I was so excited to see this guy. This is the creature from the Black Lagoon. has a wooden plaque around its neck that says, "So you want to be a frogman?" Frogman's a World War II term for what a SEAL is today. SEAL is just an acronym. Stands for sea, air, and land, the areas we operate in. And the creature was one of the first gifts from one of the first graduating classes, Coronado. Literally, right down Orange Avenue. And there's a tradition in the BUDS classes to give a gift to the instructors and to the compound. This is literally the 1950s horror film movie prop of the creature from the Black Lagoon. And to see the creature on average, it takes about 2 years. If you're coming straight off the street, come from the Naval Academy, well, it's going to take 4. And when you finally get to see the creature, you got to go through security, turn to the right. He's just standing out there by the first phase. And by the way, SEAL training is broken into 3 very creative phases. First phase, second phase, and third phase. Goes for about 30 weeks, okay? But to see that creature, they don't put you in the SEAL training right away. They put you in this holding cell for 7 weeks. It's this pre-phase area. They put you in old World War II uniforms, and they teach you some SEAlisms like being a sugar cookie, that's being wet and sandy, run out, roll around in the sand, right? And when you finally see that creature, on that very first day of the pre-phase training, they make you take a PT test, a physical training test, 3 times. Push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, a swim, and a run. Now, you have already taken that and passed that 3 times before you showed up. They make you take it again right there. And then at the end of 7 weeks, they make you take it a 5th time. Now, you're stronger at that point. You've been through some SEAL training. Now, not intense. They're marinating you, but you're stronger, okay? There's 122 of us, 3 officers, 121 enlisted. And right before they have us take this test, they have us stand in front of the creature. Nice little military rows, right? We're standing at attention. Officers right up in front row. And then the first phase instructor walks out. And he comes out from the side, and he walks with a limp. Now, he walks with a limp because his left butt cheek had been blown off by a rocket-propelled grenade in Vietnam. This is his last tour of duty. And he talks like this. And he says, he's standing right in front of the creature. "Candidates of the class of 181, you all interested to know the secret of making it through Navy SEAL training?" And we're like, "Well, come on, break ranks. Don't make me raise my voice." And we were like kids to a campfire full of free s'mores, right? We're all huddled up right around the creature. And he stands there, and he looks for a minute, and he goes, "Well, that secret, it ain't complicated. It's hard, but it ain't complicated. You see, you just have to decide what you're going to think about. Are you going to think about the pain of training? Or are you going to think about the pleasure that training can provide you?" Now we're all like, "Oh, great, we got a philosopher here." Like, what? Well, you know what the rub is here? You see, I know for a fact over 80% of you, you've only been thinking about being a SEAL on a sunny day. And you see, that's a rub. You see, your country, she don't need SEALs on sunny days. She needs them on scary days when it's cold and it's dark, wet. Oh, and a crack over your head. That ain't thunder. That's somebody want you dead. How bad you want to be a SEAL on that day, huh? We're all like, yeah, we're in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what? You know what my job is? It's to create a conversation in here to drive you to make a decision of what you're going to think about. So you do yourself a little favor. You think real hard before you take this next little PT test, because you pass it, well, You're coming to my side of the compound come Monday morning, 0500. Oh, and while you're thinking about it, well, enjoy this sunny San Diego day. Bye now. You know, we may have called him something other than Instructor Half-Butt. He loved to tell us he could do more with his half-butt than we could with our full butts. But I made a decision. I wanted to start off this conversation with you with that story because you may never be being prepped to go through SEAL training. That's not the point. The point is that we all have that conversation. That's the leadership conversation. That's the single most important reason, I would argue, why the entire ReSource Pro team has put together everything that you did on this calendar today. To give you a series of new information inputs that you can make decisions about. You had 4 great speakers just during that TED Talk, offering up things about, hey, we can do this parametrics, thinking about the human-centered design. How are you going to incorporate purple people? I love that, by the way, Darren. I think that's great. But along that curve, I want to make sure you understand, everyone's thinking about being a SEAL on a sunny day. Take out SEAL. Put it in insurance operations. I can tell you right now, and I'll share a story later, man, I was so glad I had you as part of my civilian SEAL team because it's critical. I personally know the business that you're in. It's not what you think. You're in the sleep business. You really are. I've been a CEO much longer than I've been a SEAL. And there have been some really sleepless nights until I really worked with my insurance team to know that we were covered. I mean, I think of it militarily, like it's like the Iron Dome. We need that, right? So I want to impress that upon you as we go through this. So dealing with this conversation, let's talk about the conversation from a metaphor perspective. I call this a mindset horizon. Now, you know I was in the Navy. I like nautical metaphors. This is a horizon. You can walk over to the Hotel Del, walk down to the beach, and if you're a 6-foot-tall person, Admiral, you're not allowed to answer this question. Do you know how far you can see before the horizon drops off? It's a dead calm day, by the way. How far can you see? I'm asking you. 2 miles. Give me one more. 17. 6 miles. Okay, 2 miles is really close. It's 2.9 miles. It's not that far. By the way, someone once said, to infinity and beyond. It's not that. But here's the thing I really want to stress to you on this mindset that we all have to deal with. And what I'm really talking about is dealing with new things. Newsflash, change is constant, and it's only going to get faster. And the technology is only going to be as good as what we want it to do for us. So we're going to have to get really comfortable being uncomfortable at crossing new horizons. Now, I don't know all your businesses. I know very little about your businesses, but I can tell you there are strategic plans, and sometimes people come up with a goal, and it's way past the horizon, way beyond what you can see. Another point. The old adage, seeing is believing, is not true. When you're going after something way beyond the horizon, you're going to have to believe before you can see it. But you have a couple of challenges here. And remember, I'm also thinking of this as you as the team leader. Your challenge is this, especially as we get older. The first thing we do is we look in the rearview mirror. What is it that we know? What are we comfortable with? We are in the harbor of a comfort zone which leads to mediocrity. Yet, we need to go to that goal way past the horizon. And this area is a big challenge area for us. What does our mind typically go to when we deal with something in the unknown for the very first time? And by the way, almost everything I suspect you've heard today, there's some new things in there that you're not 100% sure how you're going to deal with it. Probably not even 5% sure. Where our mind goes is straight to the negative. It's a natural instinct. Right there. What? Why would we want to go past that horizon? There's sharks out there. We could get eaten. And we make a mountain out of a molehill out of negativity. Negativity bias. It's now well documented. Okay? But if you're aware of negativity bias, you as the leader, you can call it out to your team. Good. We're dealing with negativity. That means we're pushing an envelope to a new horizon, to something new for us. And if we can get past that, then we can start to focus and envision the opportunity. It's a natural instinct, folks, on every new thing you deal with. Now, I can geek out on this. I have a new book coming out this month called Unstoppable Mindset. It is all about this concept. But I want to introduce this concept to you because it's a very important part of your leadership decisions. And this piece right here is what I call the leadership zone. There, it's where the risk is. It's where you don't know the outcome. This spot between the known and the unknown is where you have to get comfortable playing. It's that place. Now, if you were sitting on the Coronado Beach and you swam 3 miles out, which, by the way, we have done, you lose sight of land with the exception of high towers. But if you go past that point on the horizon, there becomes a point where you can't do the same navigation that you were doing before. You don't have the landmarks anymore. Josh, in his presentation this morning, had that quotation from Albert Einstein. You know, the one that's like, hey, you can't do the same thinking that causes the problem to solve the problem. The same thing happens when you go past a horizon. You're going to have to use some new navigational tools to get you there. And when you're there, you have this constant decision that's going on. It's not just you, it's your team. And here's how I think of it. It's like a wheel of fortune. It's constantly going back and forth. And it's saying, can I or can't I? Because you have to decide first if you can or you can't before your team will then be, okay, we can do this. Because there'll be laggards along the way. And it won't just be that one time that you go across the horizon. You'll have a series of different obstacles that you have to come across. 3 basic ones to anything new that you're bringing into your company and you're thinking about adopting. The first big obstacle will just be starting. When good old instructor Halfbutt told us about, well, it ain't complicated, it's just hard. Now, he went on for more than what I gave you for that story. He talked to us about how he was going to treat us like a piece of metal and pound on us and all that kind of stuff. But you know how many people passed that last test? 64. We went from 122 to 64. From some guy with a half a butt cheek going out and telling us what it might be like in the future. They didn't even get to the starting line. And it took them 2 years to get there. How many times have you heard of people quitting, giving up, coming up with an excuse? Oh, that's why we didn't try that. No, we weren't ready for that. Not for us. It comes in all different shapes and sizes, the excuses. And then the next one is you've gotten there. You've left that harbor of mediocrity, the comfort zone, and you're out there, and you're getting beat up. It's hard. The wind, the waves, the currents, they're pushing you all around. You probably run aground a few times. I have failed way more than I've succeeded. Way more. That's where a lot of other people leave during that phase. And then the final phase, you shift your thinking, your focus, and you're like, oh, this sucks. How much longer? Really? I mean, anyone who has parents, I got 4 kids, or anyone who is a parent, you know what it's like. Are we there yet? That's your own mindset, focusing in on tiring. Oh, I don't know, and then you don't give a committed action. So I want to give another story. We're going to do a little more mindset before I get to teams. So good old instructor Halfbutt, he wasn't kidding about conversations. The conversations came quick, and they came fast. Threw us in the pool, tied our feet together, tied our hands behind our back, taught us how to do drown proofing. People quit the very first day. And then they would do this. all the time. Favorite torture technique. Very simple. It's called surf torture. And it happens right out there, sometimes right in front of the Hotel Del in the middle of the night. Walk out, knee deep. You've seen it? Yeah, that's Hell Week. We're going to get to that just now. I'm going to tell that story. But the first week is not Hell Week. They just sit you out in cold water, and they drive a big pickup truck everywhere, and it's got a big harness with a bell, brass bell on the end of the tow hitch that comes out. And all you have to do is, whatever you're doing, drop what you're doing, walk over, ring that bell 3 times, and you've quit. No questions asked. They'll immediately remove you. Surf torture is a very simple thing, and in the beginning it was very effective. They just keep you out there until somebody walked out and quit. And then after a while, the class kind of figures it out. Now, every class has a song. Ours, she's a grand old flag, she's a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may she wave. And after a while, you'd hear guys, hey, sing and sun. Focus on the song, and then look at the sun. And you'd be sitting there, and by the way, you're looking at the beach, so the waves are coming behind you. And they were right. When you could feel a little sun on your cheeks and you just focused on that sun while your arms are linked together and you're singing, like, it worked. We didn't really think about how cold they were. And the instructors, they even knew that. By week 2, no more surf torture. Stopped. It wasn't working for them, so they came to other kinds of torture. But they're quite creative over there. But then we got to Hell Week. Hell Week was the 6th week. Now, Hell Week is a time period where they take you from a Sunday to a Friday afternoon. They give you a total of 3.5 hours of sleep for the entire week. Now, they have around-the-clock instructors, 8-hour shifts. And I want to introduce you to this instructor that introduced us for the first time to night surf torture. Now, night surf torture looks like what you might think. You can't see anything. They've taken away the sun. Now, they have some spotlights that will come on, but so you're not looking at a black slide. I'm going to put this back up. It's the very first night of Hell Week. It's about midnight. I went through in December, which is a winter Hell Week. And this character has an electronic megaphone slung over his shoulder, and he's got a coiled handset. And he talks like this because he's from South Boston. And he's constantly using the megaphone for everything. Class 181, it's time for me to get my first quitter. Go ahead, Alden Mills. Get him out there. Hey, put the lights on him. They got a lot of emergency vehicles right here. And making sure no one can come down the beach. Lights right on them. That's it. That's good. About face, link arms, take seats. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay out there until one is yours, and he walks all the way up to the high water mark. He takes his index finger and he goes, until one is yours, steps on this X and says the magic words. You know what they are. I quit. He says that. We start singing our song. It's now a test of wills, right? She's a grand old flag. She's a high-flying flag. It goes on and on and on. And you can see him. After a while, he's pacing and he's getting a little frustrated. Now, there's another thing that was making him frustrated. The Navy builds these big sand berms so the public can't see what's going on. And they also, in SEAL Command, invite old SEALs back to watch and make sure that Hell Week was just as tough as when they went through. And they are not a helpful audience. They're out on the berm. It was snowing in San Diego. Keep them in the water. You know, we're like, oh my God, please, go away. And after a while, he's frustrated, and he stops like a light bulb comes on, and he goes, hey, Doc, get in that ambulance. I want you to drive it and park it right here. Doc, not a Navy SEAL, he's there because the Navy makes him be there, gets in the ambulance, drives it, parks it right there, and he's getting out. And it's raining outside. He's got Gore-Tex up, and he's got his hood on, and as he's walking over, he goes, Doc, hang on a second. Open up the back of that ambulance. He opens up the back of the ambulance, and we skip a beat with our song. We go, she's a, oh. They had that ambulance heated up to something like a Swedish sweat lodge inside. Huge plume of heat comes out, and they even had a little candle in there, flickering. And we were like, oh, you getting cold out there? Doc, come here. Let's teach the class about hypothermia. Doc comes over, and he sticks the megaphone into his mouth, and he's like, well, hypothermia is clinically a 4-degree drop in your body core temperature. That's great, Doc. How long you got to be in the water before you're hypothermic? Doc's got a chart, flipping through it, looks at it. Well, it's 58.4 degrees. That would be about 19 and a half minutes. I'm looking at my chronometer here. Doc, they've been in the water for over 25 minutes. Tell them the symptoms of hypothermia. What do you think happens? Boom. Sticks the megaphone into his mouth. Doc goes, well, first symptom is you start shaking uncontrollably, like a light switch. Boom! We start shaking. We're not singing anymore. Now all we're doing is listening to our fate. And then he says, tell him another symptom, Doc. Well, you could start forgetting your teammates' names. What's her name? Do you remember my name? Up and down the line. And he had us, right? Doc, what happens if they stay in the water longer? Doc doesn't need his clipboard to answer that. He kind of mumbles, well, you could die. Doc, say that louder. You could die? Come on. You really want to die for this? You know what I got in that ambulance? I got hot cocoa. Got him. Petty Officer Smith, not his real name, breaks ranks, and there goes Instructor Boston, right up by the X. Smith walks right up to the X. He's on the megaphone, and he says, Petty Officer Smith, what are you doing out of the water? I want some hot cocoa. I don't understand. What are you doing out of the water? And you could hear it. You can see it first. We're about 25 yards away. His shoulders roll down, and he's like, I quit. Boston, don't worry about it. This ain't for everybody. Pats him on the back, grabs 2 SEALs. Hey, take him to X Division. And as he walks him up between the little break and the berm, Boston, he walks right down into the water. Right down, knee deep. He's in the water with us. And he says to us, Class 181, listen to me real clearly. Did I say that I had hot cocoa for quitters? I'm sitting there going, now that's cold. He waits, lets that sink in. You think there's something on the battlefield waiting for you? You think you get something for quitting? If you're lucky, you get each other. But you don't understand your most important weapon system yet. And that's what I'm going to teach you. So, you can get out just long enough for this doc to check you out, and you're going back in. Because I want more quitters. Welcome to Hell Week. Class 181. Okay, I condensed 2 hours. That right there. But that was the first 2 hours of 112 hours. Not just Instructor Boston. I mean, we had Instructor Psycho, Instructor Popeye, Instructor Aloha, Instructor Antichrist, Ogre, They were all there. And incidentally, you know, I'm giving you from a SEAL perspective, which is fun because it's also right down the street. But if there are any other veterans, they know what I'm talking about. They all had those same kind of characters because they were doing something very important. And that weapons system that he's talking about is literally our focus. Now, I think of focus like a funnel. And I talk about it a lot. And the funnel, all it does is it funnels energy into taking an action. That's the simplest of our focus funnel. We own this. This is ours. And your job as a leader is to, one, make sure you own your focus funnel, and then help others on your team know how to work their focus funnel. But it's not that simple, now is it? Because the focus funnels can be pretty porous. When our focus is laser-like, we're directing that energy into a very committed all-point in action. But the problem is the focus funnel sprouts holes, right? On the left-hand side, those are external hole makers. Different people, different times of day, different things that have happened. Why do you think you can make it through this? No one says you've ever been able to make it through SEAL training. Well, you know people chirping, the negativity bias. Come, misery loves company. Be with us in mediocrity. And then you have the ones on the right-hand side, the internal hole makers, the biggest challenge ones. And those are all based on fear and all its different faces of fear. Now, to get there, I want to leave just one tool for you to think about focus before we move to teams. I want you to think that you have a screen on the top of your funnel. Now, this is an adaptive screen. You're in control of it. You can open the aperture. You can close the aperture. It's yours. You own this. And here's how I want you to think about thoughts. Thoughts, if anybody's ever studied the work by Katie Byron, I love how she talks about it. Thoughts are like clouds. They go by our head all the time. They are past thoughts, present thoughts, future thoughts, all kinds of thoughts. We have literally tens of thousands of thoughts. Some neuroscientists is counting them out these days. But they're all just flying over our head like a cloud. They do not become helpful or hurtful until we put them into the focus funnel, until we attach to them, until we give them energy. And that's a leadership decision, folks. You own that. And to do that requires practice. And it's going to require you on your team working with each other to say, hey, wait a second, is that helpful or hurtful to get us where we need to go? Because your goal is to take those thoughts that you want to be focusing on, that you get your team to focus on, to solve the problems that we were using the same kind of thinking before, to embrace different perspectives. By the way, that was also something Josh Levine talked about. And that's hard to do at first, but it is yours to practice. Now, I want to flip for a moment. 15 years ago, or 15 years after I got out of Surf Zone, I created the world's greatest fat-burning device. Have you seen this? It's a body rev for women. Have you seen this? It's the world's greatest fat-burning device. Have you seen it? Anybody know how this works? Well, this was all a problem for me. I raised $1.5 million from 37 of my closest friends and family, and then I learned $1,475,000 worth of ways not to launch that product. I was broke. I was looking at bankruptcy. And by the way, I had 5 very helpful investors bring me in and go, it's over. We're not going to give you any more money. And I was asking them for a little bit more money. I was like, I think after 4 years, I'm finally going to pivot to something else. No, Alden, let's show you this chart. It's called a cash flow statement. You don't have any. You owe your manufacturer $500,000. You can't pay your lawyers. You can't pay your accountant. Over. And oh, by the way, you need to go get a job. Wife was pregnant with number 3 child at that point. Had a small team, 5 of us. They kicked me out, and they said, no more money. We're not going to fund anything. I literally was sitting there in the parking lot for an hour, like, what am I going to tell my team? And, I come back in. Did you get the money? No. Oh, it's over. Game over. We got to go bankrupt. What am I going to tell my wife? They were already there. They went down that negativity slope so quickly. Wait. I got something better. I got enough money. We can cover everybody's benefits. Let's do 90 days. 90 days to see if this product could work. Alden, it's not going to happen. We can't cut steel in 90 days. And by the way, we owe $500,000 to the manufacturer, and we can't do this, and we can't do that, and we can't do that. All logical reasons, by the way. Every single one of them. And I agreed. I'm like, you're right. I haven't seen a place where we cut steel, but maybe if we call the manufacturer up, and by the way, I still have some equity, we can give some equity to them. We know what's going to happen if we go down the bankruptcy aisle. We'll give you a week. We started knocking things down, one after the other after the other. 87 days later, we launched these. Have you seen these? Yeah, I know about 15 million people just in the United States have seen them. Okay, but this product was one conversation multiple times a day. Remember when I showed you I can't? That wheel was spinning about every 2 minutes in our little team. And we just had to get one more success, and then one more success. And by the way, this is when I discovered what business you're really in. This is the sleep business. If you want to get sued, go into fitness products and have a killer product that does great, and everybody under the sun, we would get sued a couple of times a week. Even made the New York Post getting sued for loss of companionship. I didn't even know what that was. Insurance was a key player here. As Dan Epstein would say, my trusted partner, without question. It was a very important piece of our business. So we're going to move past this for a moment. I want to just share a couple of these focus fundamentals. Your funnel, it doesn't matter what it puts in. It's agnostic. You can put helpful, you can put hurtful. Just know, when I say hurtful, I'm talking about negative energy. Negative energy is a lot faster. It multiplies a lot quicker. On average, neuroscientists will tell you, you need 3 positives to offset 1 negative, just to offset. You're going to need 5 positives to be in the winner's column. You start thinking negatively, it is a really wild, slippery slope. Number 2, it attracts like energy. You know that old adage, oh, one bad apple spoils the bunch. That goes for your focus. And the more you're aware of that, the more you can have an impact. Now, I'm going to give you another story about focus that I want you to be aware of. When we were going through Hell Week, Friday, before Hell Week, Instructor Halfbutt came to us at lunchtime and said, Alden Mills, I'm taking the instructors out for lunch. We'll be gone for 1 hour. I want you and your whole class to clean our office. Okay, we're 36 people at that point. It's an odd request because the office was about 12 desks, corresponding number of trash cans, and mopping the office would take about 6 minutes with 36 people. We're going to be gone for 1 hour, all of us. Very explicit about it. I'm like, okay, standing at attention, hoo-yah, Instructor Halfbutt, they all walk away. And here we are. I'm like, all right, guys, let's get in there and we'll clean this up. And we were literally doing shifts so everybody didn't feel left out on the work. And we walk in, and on the front desk, turned to us, is a large 3-ring white notebook. It's about that thick. And it had big block letters. Hell Week, Class 181, schedule. One guy picks it up. I got the Hell Week schedule, sir. I'm like, don't you think that's a little odd that it's sitting right there? And it was facing us. And he looks at it, he's flipping through it, and he goes, you know what? I think I have just enough time to go photocopy this. Another coincidence. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't even look at it. Just leave it. He runs out, photocopies the whole thing, all the pages. Do you know how much stuff you can do when you have Navy SEAL instructors around the clock instructing you for 5.5 days? I had no idea, but it's a lot of stuff. And by the way, I think it really was all in that book. He comes back 50 minutes later, puts the book, and he goes, I got it. I'm like, really? I wouldn't look at that. He goes back with his roommate, and what do you think happens? They start flipping through it. Look at all this work. No way. They're crazy. We're not going to be able to do this. This isn't even possible. They're going to hurt people. And then they go out, and they start trying to get other people to buy in. Saturday morning, our week starts on a Sunday, they both quit. I call that the moment versus the mountain. When you start looking at the whole mountain of work and all your focus is on that whole mountain of work, when you're thinking like, oh, AI, oh my God, how hard is that going to be? I don't even know about how to spell it. And we got to bring this in. And if you just start thinking of the mountain of work, your focus explodes. Use the mountain of work for progress, but stay in the moment. The present is what matters most. You can only do one thing at a time. And that's how you got through Hell Week. That's how you climb a mountain. That's how you launch a product. It's one thing at a time. Now, if it feels like I could geek out just on mindset, I'd be happy to. But I want to give you some of this team discussion. That was part of the conversation we had with ReSource Pro. When I think about what it means to build a team and what's the kind of secret formula to it, I think the simplest way, and it's been said best about 100 years ago by Teddy Roosevelt. I think he said it something like this: no one cares how much you know until they know how much they care. It comes down to care. And it may seem kind of odd for a former Navy SEAL to talk about it. I will tell you it's more than care, it's love. When somebody goes out and jumps on a grenade for their platoon, walks into the line of fire, takes the bullet for somebody else, goes back into a crazy scenario, they're not doing it because, gee, I can't wait to die for the country. They're doing it because they have such deep connection with each person on that team. The book, should you choose to pick it up, is based off of this. I call this the care loop. Now, a couple of things I'm going to warn you up front. I love acronyms, and I create acronyms that are directly in alignment with what I want you to remember, because if you don't remember something, it does you no good, so you can coach other people with it. CARE, I turned into an acronym. 4 key components of team building: connect, achieve, respect, empower. I'm going to walk you through and give you a little cliff notes on each one of those. And I've also violated some Keynote speaking principles in here. There are going to be 2 other acronyms in here, and they have a lot of words on them. I'm not here to read them to you. They're there for you to take home and print out and read them and use them with your team. But let's start here. When we talk about building out teams, when somebody new shows up in a team, when you are the leader and you've been dropped in to a team, the very first order of business is learning to connect with all the wild, different personalities. Now, I do want to bring one thing up. And I talked about this in the very beginning when he said go to X division. And I want to be very clear with everybody. SEAL team, leading in SEAL team is much easier than leading civilian SEALs. Much easier. And I call it my SEAL team experience and my civilian team experience. And why is that? Well, for one, we have this thing called the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I give you an order, you got to do it. I mean, it's a legal binding order, right? You don't have that here. In SEAL team, in SEAL training, they have this thing called X division. In an X division, when somebody gets removed, either objectively or subjectively, and put into X division, they're not even allowed to look at you. They're sweeping the floor. They stop, they turn their backs, and they can't even look. They don't want the people in the arena to look at the people who've already quit. You can't do that. You can't have an X division in the civilian world. And you definitely can't put them in the surf zone. I do have a story about that for another time. But the point about connecting, the whole purpose of we go out and connect is to build trust. Now, trust, if there is no trust, there is no team. You are stuck at a group, period. That's it. Now, in building that out, I want to just give you the formula for trust. We could do a whole breakout session on this. That's not the point. I'm giving this as a cheat sheet. Trust is like this. There are 4 key C's that you need: communication, caring, competency, and consistency. When you have those, that leads to credibility and your accountability. And you will build trust. Now, it's easy to put it up on a slide. What's the key component that gets this whole thing rolling for you? It's communication. And if you break communication down, there's really 2 elements. There is me transmitting or me receiving. That's communication. What's the more important one? If I'm the new kid on the block, what's the more important one? Transmit or receive? Receive. I'm the new one. Why do I think I should be telling you what to do, right? And so when you think about this, and by the way, Google found this out with a project called Project Aristotle. They did a multi-million-dollar deep dive into why they're having all this problem with all these alpha, super smart people. And what did they come up with? We are terrible at listening. We're not listening to each other. You know, there's courses on it now. They're starting to look in adding listening in college, in the curriculum. So here's a basic cheat sheet for you. There are 3 types of listening. Number 1, listen to win. You know what that's like. Somebody is listening to you just to pull out something you've said, to flip it back and see, I'm smart, you're not. My idea is great, yours stinks. That's listening to win, right? They're just picking out a couple of pieces of information. Then there's the number 2 way. This is listen to fix. And if you were listening to Josh Levine on the first conversation that he talked a lot about jumping to a solution before understanding the problem. Do you remember that slide? He's exactly right. Fix. Great in operations, great in engineering. Next problem, let's go. It's a task list, let's get it done. The problem with listening to fix is that we don't get contextually all the information, so maybe we're fixing something that for a short-term solution that gives us a long-term problem. Now, the one you want to listen to, and what they discover, is listen to understand. Listen to understand is hard. First slide. Did I violate Keynote speaking principles? It's coming up. Preparing. You ready? Okay, here it is. It's my first acronym for you. Now, there are 6 major ways to listen to understand. I'm not going to read them off. I want you to be aware also of a Harvard study called 55-38-7. 55-38-7. 55% of communication happens non-verbally before somebody's even looked at you. The next 38% tone, and the final piece, your words. That does not mean if everything is in alignment that you can just say whatever you want. The idea here is to talk about the congruency of how you communicate on that. Now, on this, I'm going to ask everybody and just shout it out. What do you think is the hardest one of these 6 points to listen? Suspend your judgment. Oh, and by the way, women typically always get that one first. They're way more intuitive to that. It is. It's true. Suspend your judgment. Very hard, especially as we get older. And some young whippersnapper comes in and says, well, what if we were to do this? And what if you assume for that moment that that person were right? Regardless if that person was right or not, But if you learn to listen, that person will feel valued. And that's the goal of listening to understand. It's not accepting the different diversity of thought or the different perspective. It's making them feel valued and you truly listening and not just going, good, got it, thanks. Okay, you turn your body and you listen. This is for you. Now, the other piece is achieve. Now, I want to also stress to you, these aren't sequential. This isn't like, well, we can't do anything until we build trust. They stack on each other, right? Every team that's created achieves something. What is the point there? The point is to set direction. Now, when we set direction, there are two key things I want to talk about that I see a lot of mistakes happening with teams. Number one is how they goal set. Oh, we don't need goals. We'll just roll through it, or we just got an ROI we need to hit. We know what it is. And number two is maybe they've set the goal, but they haven't aligned the meaning with the mission. Cheat sheet on goal setting. I have a free course on goal settings, 30 minutes, you can go through it. Talks about the 4 stages going from dream to vision to goal to daily action. But here's the crib notes. I call it the 3 Ds. Defining, dividing, and doing it daily. What do you think's the hardest part? What? Daily. Without question. Because the moment you defined the goal, the next thing is you have to create a new routine. You got to create a new behavior. That's hard. That's a leadership challenge. And to do that, I want you to think of it like this. When you're asking your team, because you've got to get them in the mindset, to make an action happen, we have to first think it, then we speak it, then we take the action. Ask them, hey, is this helpful or hurtful? Are we going to get this piece done? What you're doing today, is it helpful or hurtful to creating the new behavior? The second piece I want to tell in the form of a story. It's 1997. I'm on my 3rd platoon. I'm at SEAL Team 2. We're forward deployed out of Germany, and we're sent down into Bosnia to get a person indicted for war crimes. He's a particularly bad person. He was the ace of clubs. We used a deck of cards for these guys. And his code name was Dr. Death, responsible for over 60,000 genocide. And before we went to go find this guy, we were part of the reconnaissance team. The commanding officer of the base in Sarajevo put us in a couple armored Humvees and drove us through one of the little towns where Dr. Death's henchmen had been at work. And we have Bosnian translators sitting there, and we're driving through town, and the first thing he points out is, you'll see X and you'll see O. X means family exterminate, not kid. O, family live. And they're spray painted on every door. And then you drive into the town. In the center of the town, there's a little playground. And it was the first time I've ever seen severe PTSD children. White hair, bald splotches, some completely bald. And they walked with like a 1,000-yard stare. Then they would just shuffle. They looked like little zombies. None of them were on the playground. They just walked around. And we would ask them, like, what is wrong with these children? And they would say, oh, they watch family get murdered. He'd go into some of the details of that, which I won't, which were just awful. And we come back after that day, and we go see the colonel of the base. He's also a Southerner, by the way. Hey, Lieutenant Mills, how'd you like your field trip today? That was pretty rough, sir. Good. You ready to go on the mission? Yes, sir. We start the mission. It's supposed to be 4 days hanging out on the side of this kind of roadside cliff, taking pictures of this guy coming by. It doesn't go well. Camera breaks. We're using a first-generation SLR digital camera. We got an upload link. Things aren't working. He's like, all right, Lieutenant Mills, mission abort, talking on the radio. Sir, quest mission 1 more day. You got a plan? Yes, sir. Granted. And we stay out there for another day. Doesn't work. Mission abort. Sir, quest mission 1 more day. You got a plan? Yes, sir. Granted, 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 granted. 12 days we stayed out. Why did we stay out there that long? What do you think we saw? I still see those kids. Every single one of us was sitting there like, no way, man. We're getting this guy. Got resupplied while we were out there. The whole point of what he was doing was aligning a meaning with the mission. You know, the last speaker that was up here, he talked about changing the vernacular. Remember, he was talking about premiums. He's like, oh, I don't really like premiums. I want you to think of this as a service of what you're doing. He's talking about aligning the meaning with the mission and personalizing it. And that's a really powerful concept that I think you're ripe for. There's a lot of opportunity there. And when you flip the dynamic, Abraham Lincoln, to win a person to your cause, you must first reach their heart, the great high road to their reason. Well, that's what the colonel was doing for us. It wasn't enough to be the bravado SEALs going out to get the bad guy. It was showing what those guys do. Same thing for your business. Everywhere. When you put together a goal and you're putting your team together, you personalize it. You align that meaning with the mission. Connect with the heart. So at this point, I've been doing this for about 10 years of coaching teams, writing about teams, looking at different kinds of teams. My experience, over 50% of all organizations are here. They're at what I call a directed group. They got reply all. Everybody knows the big ROI goal or the big OKRs that we've got. But to cross from a group to a team requires this. Now, it may not be what you think. This isn't just a nice HR word so we can all get along in the sandbox. You know what the goal of respect is? Why there should be a mutual respect, even if it's the young whippersnapper showing up with the crazy new idea? The outcome, goal for respect is to get contribution. The contribution that we're after is the diversity of the thought, the difference of opinion. That means that for the leader is going to have to follow this formula. This is it. You invite the conflict in. The conflict that I'm really referring to is the difference of the opinion. You say left, Sally says, no, I think we should go right, and here's why. And you have a healthy debate over that. Sally, new person on the team, says, oh my gosh, Alden listened to me. Goes back that night, tells her husband and goes, you're never going to believe this. I was the first day on the job, and he stopped, and he's like, I want to hear about this. Tell me why. And then I gave her new information. Well, you know, Sally, I didn't give you all the information. I'm going to tell you why we have to go left because of this, this, and this. But I really like that opinion. Sally goes to bed that night thinking about, oh my God, I felt heard. He listened to me. She gets up the next day and goes, I'm going to try again. I'm going to come up with something new. That leads to confidence. The confidence leads to more contribution. That's in the ideal world with respect. That's how you want high-performing teams to work. Evie said something really powerful that she said after every single flight mission they did, they were constantly looking, what could we do better? She would say, hey, what did we learn? What can we do better? It wouldn't be enough for her, just as the captain, to say, well, this is what I learned, everyone else, you don't matter. She was looking at every single person to understand that. And if you embrace that with that kind of respect, that leads to high-performing teams. But here's a challenge. And by the way, here's a way that you instigate this as the leader and be the facilitator. Take a step back. When we do a debrief on a mission, I don't do the debrief. I turn it over to somebody else and say, because I might be part of the problem. Hey, Petty Officer Smith, you run the debrief. What went well, what didn't go well? I'm just one of them. I'm part of the team. I'm equally responsible for messing up as they are. and getting myself called out for it. Try that technique of shifting the debrief, not from the position of power, but maybe even the junior person, and get them to ask these questions. Now, the bigger challenge of respect happens when you get dropped in to a team, really a group, that hasn't been performing well. And maybe it's because they had a leader in there that has not had mutual respect. It's been my way or the highway. The problem with that challenge is you're not going to be able to move forward until you clear existing conflict. We are judgment-making machines, and we will continue to reinforce those judgments until we share them. This is slide number 2 that I'm violating. This is in this slide that I'm about to show you is designed for you to read through it, go to the website, look and study this, because it's a very important element to help you go to the next level. Clearing conflict is a process. It's a process that involves another person to sit there as well. The idea here is you have to move the existing emotion. Emotion is nothing more than energy and motion, but if you don't move that, that person's going to continually reinforce the judgment. You got to create a space where they can share the judgment. When that happens, we can move forward at a much faster space. So if you're that person that's just dropped into the team, use that. Look for places to clear that conflict. And then you can have fun with it after a while. Believe it or not, people will get comfortable with the radical candor of like, hey, I got to clear something with you. Great, let's go do it. When we get to that point, now we've got a team. When we close that loop, it's about empowering. Now, empowering, I have heard so many people use the word empower. Do you know why it's so hard to empower? You know what it means? Anybody? Why is it so hard? Everyone's like, oh, we're trying to empower everybody. Empower means you have to give your power away. That's the hard part. You've worked 20 years to get to the VP position. You want to hold that power. No, you have to give it away. People don't want to do that. Ego gets in the way. Have you heard the term, ego's not your amigo? Right? True. You see, empowering isn't actually that complicated, especially if you give some guardrails to it. The importance of empowering is that it makes everybody feel as they're an owner. Everybody in the SEAL platoon goes out and does the planning together. They know they have ownership on that mission. Now, I want to also harp on this. Like, I'm not saying everything you do in the SEAL team is directly correlated to everything you do as a civilian. There are some nice parallels on some things, but not everything. This is one of those that's a parallel. The ownership. So there are 3 guardrails that you know if you have this structure, you will be able to get in the position of empowering people. Here they are. Guardrail number 1. And understand this. To get to ownership means you got to get them to take action. And there are 3 components to this in any organization. And I evaluate this all the time. Number 1, do you enable your team to execute? Are they educated to execute? Do they have enough of a wide guardrail so they can go and execute and get their things done? Or are you micromanaging and saying, do this, do this, do this? Newsflash. All this great technology that's happening right now, all it's doing is giving more power to the people on the front lines. You have to learn to that empowerment. That's what this technology is doing. Every piece of it. So get comfortable empowering and making sure they know what they need to do on executing, and make sure you, as the leader, are giving them the ability to execute. Number 2, do they have an avenue for improvement as the individual and for the system they work in? Evie talked about, hey, they have a place where anybody and everybody can put in a suggestion note anonymously. What you'd really like to get to is a real comfortable place where people raise their hand immediately because you've invited the conflict in. Yeah, This stinks. We need to fix it. Great. I'm on it. You own it. Let's go. If there isn't an avenue for people to feel like they can improve themselves and the system they're in, they will not be empowered. The final piece is you and helping them, and that's coaching. It's not just leading. Coaching is leading with education. Are you constantly in a mode where, hey, let me show you something. Let me put them in a position to coach? If you have those three, you have a great opportunity, as long as your ego doesn't get in the way, to empower and build owners. Why is this a loop? Why is it a loop? It never ends. It absolutely never ends. Here's another question. Is this only for your coworkers? Absolutely not. Last chapter of the book is all about how to take the team and what you're doing inside your team and scaling it to your customers, to your community, to your contributors, vendors, and not just your coworkers. Because when that happens, and they feel the care that you're bringing to all these new areas, they will not let you fail. But that's a mindset shift, which, by the way, brings you back to the individual. Think of this care loop like extending a slinky. And how do we get it to spin? That is where I'm going to leave you with the last story. For this, you got to look at a black slide. My most terrifying moment in SEAL training was actually after I'd been a SEAL for about 4 years. I got picked up for advanced military freefall. In advanced military freefall, you jump as high as 23,000 feet. You're doing hey-low, high altitude, low opening, hey-ho, high altitude, high opening. You're driving on a GPS on these things. You're going for miles and miles at night. You got gear and everything. That stuff didn't really bother me. I'd done lots of jumps. The thing that totally had me freaked out was now I had to pack my own parachute. And I have a very strong belief that I suck at folding things. John will know I was not good at passing room inspection in third company. I had to pay my roommates to help me. Like, I couldn't get the quarter to bounce on my bed. I was messing up the sock smiling. I always came up with a new way to fold the towels. And now I have to fold these 20 folds perfectly. Before this, they have professionals. They're called riggers. They fold them. Not now. Now I got to do my own folding. 2 weeks, fold, 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 fold. I got my folds down to like 15 minutes. And then that night, the instructor comes out and goes, all right, this is your last fold. You fold this one, you're jumping it. 3 hours I took. Is this right? I'll do it again. Fold it up, put it in the airloft. And they say, hey, we're in Yuma, Arizona. You got to jump early in the morning there because it gets so hot. He goes, sleep in. We'll wake you up at 3:45. Hope you have a good night's rest. You don't sleep the night before your first jump, at least not for me with my folding. They wake you up. I'm wide awake. I'm just sitting there. Okay, let's go. Get down to the airloft. And before they take out our parachutes, they pull out the jumpsuit. It's bright yellow. And I'm looking at my master sergeant. He was master sergeant in the Air Force. He was my jump buddy. I'm like, hey, master sergeant, what's up with this bright banana jumpsuit? He's like, oh, sir, so if you go splat 14,000 feet, we can see you. I'm like, oh, not helpful. No. Put my flying banana jumpsuit on. Put on my chute I packed, and they load up C-130. It's like 4:45 in the morning. And I'm the senior man on the jump, so I'm sitting right next to the ramp. Ramp's right here, and I'm in a little hammock right here. Fly up past 10,000 feet. First jump's going to be at 14,000 feet. You pass 10,000, the ramp goes down. The moment the ramp goes down, it is the loudest hairdryer, or leaf blower, you pick it, you've ever heard. You're going 140 knots, and so any communication inside that airplane, once that ramp is down, you have to use hand signals. You pass 12,000 feet, jump light comes on, big red jump light right above the ramp, and it's just shining inside there. Master Sergeant walks over to me. Sir, stand up. Here I am, I'm sitting in my little hammock in my bright yellow jumpsuit, and everybody's looking down. Ooh, Lieutenant Mills got to jump first. Back up to the ramp. Backwards. Helpful. Sir, put your heels over the ramp. Now I'm on the balls of my feet, right? I'm like this. Everybody's looking at me and they're like, I'm standing like this. Sir, look down. And I catch the quickest glance. I just go, phew, just like that, underneath my right armpit. Pretty high, isn't it? I was like, not funny. Will you jump? Yes. Okay. 14,000 feet, green light. Bing! Comes on. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. We're jumping. And he goes, oh, I forgot one last thing to tell you. I'm standing there and on the balls of my feet. I'm like, what? You have the rest of your life to figure out how to open your parachute. Good luck. Poof. He pushes me off the ramp. I go flying backwards, somersault. I get flat and stable, falling 120 miles an hour. He comes flying in. He's laughing. He goes, oh, you figure it out. Rest of your life's about 50 seconds. You want to pass, you got to pull. I'll watch. Okay? You can pull now. Poof. Oh, it opened. Thank God. I have to catch my breath after doing it because I really feel like I was just in that jump. You know, I decided to end with that story today for two reasons. Because that's leadership, folks. Every one of us. We're all packing our own parachutes. You know, thankfully, it's not like that because you're going to make mistakes as a leader. That parachute's going to open, I promise you. And it's going to open because of number two. You see, one thing they don't tell you about in advanced military freefall is they're grading you on how you leave the ramp. You don't know that at first. You see, there's three ways you can leave the ramp. The first way, you can get pushed, shoved, dragged. And if that happens 3 times, they have a recruiter waiting for you down there. They're like, hey, this isn't the job for you. Come on, we'll find you another job in the military. And then number 2, you watch somebody, typically, and I've seen this happen, someone like as big as like a Rock Johnson comes running up to the ramp and then stutters and stops. And then it's like a little child at the end of a diving board jumping for the very first time. And they get a little closer to earth, and they put one foot over the side to try and get 6 inches closer at 14,000 feet. Like, that matters. They get thrown out. No, the way they want you to go is they want you to go like this. You know why they want you to go like that? And by the way, you can get flat and stable lots of different ways. If there's any jumpers in here, you know what I'm talking about. They want you to go like that because when you go head first, there's only one way you can be, all in. And when you're the junior jumper at the very front of the aircraft, and you're the last person, and you are scared, and you know that wheel of decision I talked about earlier? It's flying by. I shouldn't be doing this. This isn't normal. Don't do it. I can't do it. But you're walking, and your knees are shaking, and there's water dripping from everywhere. Everywhere. Some of us call it a night water jump. We close our eyes and pee in our pants. True. And by the time you get to that ramp, because you're watching everybody else go, you are running, and you're saying, woo! And you go. And it flips. And the switch flips, and it doesn't matter anymore. Because you're following everybody else that's going all in. And that's how you make the care loop spin. Because you're going to make mistakes, leaders. You're going to. But you don't make the mistake of not committing. Because when you commit, people will commit back to you. They'll give you that rope. They'll help you become even better. And when everybody goes all in, then you're unstoppable. Are we ready to commit today? Get all in and go for it. And make that jump. That's the QR code. At the very bottom, it's going to take you to a landing page. You are welcome to add your email if you want my newsletter. You do not have to add your email. That presentation is at the very bottom, okay? So I'll let you download that. That's the one we just had for you. And I wanted you to have that so you have those acronyms and use that. I'll tell you right now, that clearing process, it's uncomfortable at first, but it's a wildly powerful team-building tool. And if everybody works on listening, oh my gosh, you'll have so much more effect. Now, did anybody write down some questions? Because I still have time for Q&A. Do we have, or do I need to bribe somebody? You know how I can bribe somebody? Oh, yeah. What do you got? How many made it out of the class? 12. 12. By the way, I wasn't one of the originals. I got rolled back into 182. I got a lung infection, so those were 12 originals that made it. I got rolled back to 5.5 weeks, but after Hell Week, because I'd already made it through Hell Week. I got halfway through second phase, and then that was miserable. You know, it's like dog years going backwards. That tested my resolve. Thank you for the question. Yes, sir.
What was your chits to punishment ratio? More chits and more punishment.
Well, okay. Say that one again.
Your chits to punishment ratio.
Chits to punishment? Chits. What do you mean by chits?
So the chits to get a demerit versus punishment. Did you have that?
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of demerits. Did John say that on the opening? I got 2 years of restriction at the Naval Academy. That was not an actual fun time period. And for poor John, who's the company commander, like, Mills, you got to clean up your act here. Help me out. But I ended up getting way more demerits because, did I hear him talking about the president and what we did? Did you say something about the president of the United States? I'll give you a brief story, Naval Academy story. A little known fact, if the president of the United States at the time was Herbert Walker Bush, Bush 41, if you get the president of the United States to say, I hereby pardon all restrictees, you get the demerits, but you don't have to do the punishment. Now, I had 2 years of punishment on the books, and we did a gentle assault because he's covered around with his Secret Service, but we were all bringing him water in the dining hall at King Hall, and we all had chits, and these were all restrictees, and we got him to say it, and he said it with a smile. He was a great man. He was a Navy guy who, by the way, cheated on his age to be able to fly in World War II. So that's part of the story. Thank you. Yeah. Another question. Is it better? Yes, ma'am.
What's your best advice in building teams in hybrid remote environments?
Yeah. What's my advice for building teams in hybrid remote environments? Okay, that's a challenge, okay? That's the first thing. And we've spent a lot of time dealing with that. I'm literally dealing with a pharmaceutical company right now where they have 5 different manufacturing locations and a headquarters, and all of their financial team is remote. They have CFO comes in a couple of times a week. And one of the things that we've been doing is creating a personal, emotional connection. And so people will do like, all right, time to tell us the funny story. Like we're doing basically forced family fun. You know that as a parent, right? And making environments where sometimes we're getting on the call just to spend time. Like have a glass of wine on a Friday. Hey, we're going to just get here and we're going to talk about something we enjoy doing. So it doesn't just turn into Zoom burnout where all I'm doing is what's the next thing I have to do. If you can, at least once a year, if you could do it quarterly, bringing people together, doing an offsite, right? Nothing takes the place of being together. And I really stress it now. If you're dealing multinationally, I appreciate that's a different challenge. But even once a year, if you can get the budget to do that, that's critical. I know. If it's hard, then the other thing we did, book reading club. And have people own that. And we go around the room and we talk about it. So you're welcome. Hard question. And that's something where I talk about it like machine gunning versus a sniper. Sniper sets up all this time, makes one shot, and they miss. And they don't really know where they missed. Machine gunning, they know they're going to miss. But they shoot in front of the target. And you just kind of walk the bullets in. That's what that's like. You're going to walk the bullets in on trying different things. But always go back to trying to connect emotionally. Come see me after. I've got other ideas, but there's more. Okay, another question. Anyone? Yes, ma'am. Oh, Dr. Death? Yeah, we got him. Yeah, we got him. How? So that was a very interesting time period. Bosnia was not considered a conflict. It was considered a peacekeeping mission. SEALs, Special Forces, were not supposed to be there. But we got brought in inside a truck, had sanitized uniforms, and the rules were you had to get them at a roadblock. So we created ambush roadblocks. So I was on the reconnaissance team, and you had other teams sitting out, hiding away in barns. You had all kinds of contraptions to make sure the cars couldn't get by. And at the right moment, all of a sudden, these guys are flying by, and you knew where they were going. There's 3 Mercedes, and everything else is a Yugo. Like, it's obvious, right? So you do that. That's the typical way we did it. Put them in a conics box. The idea is you had to take them alive. He had to get to The Hague for the War Crimes Tribunal Act. Proud to say he died at The Hague. He was on the cover of New York Times back in like 2001 or something like, or no, it was like 19. Yeah, he was on trial for a long time. Okay, other question. Yes, ma'am. What situation helped me manifest as that? That's a great question. So what situation helped me manifest this? This is my second book. First book, I started writing in 2001. It's called Be Unstoppable, and it took me 10 years to write that book. The only reason I started writing that book is that a dear friend of mine was the first Navy SEAL to die in Afghanistan. When you go do a mission, you have to do a just-in-case letter. Just-in-case letter is there so when your next of kin receive a flag, they get a letter from the fallen in that handwriting. So I had written just-case letters 3 times for the 3 different deployments, but my next of kin was my mom, my dad, and my brother. I wasn't a father at that point. When Neil died, there was an 18-month-old child, son, that was getting a just-in-case letter. At the time, Jennifer was pregnant with what would be our first of 4 sons, and I was like, I wonder what he wrote. So I wrote a just-in-case letter for Henry. And it wasn't a good one. It was like, do this, don't do that, you know. And I knew I kept writing it after I figured out he was a boy, after he was given birth. And then I kind of gave up on it until Charlie came along. I wrote another one. And then John. And then by the time William showed up, Jennifer's like, you really ought to kind of formalize this thing. And I spent 2 more years, and then I made a parable out of it. And Be Unstoppable came out while I was still running Perfect Fitness. Actually, I had sold Perfect Fitness, but I was working for the larger company. And then Sleep Number got the book, and they're like, I'm giving this to all 3,000 employees, and this is all about making dreams come true, and we're in the dream business. You're going to come speak to us. 3,000 people. My first speech. I was like, whoa, I wasn't sure I was ready for that. So you ask, that is actually what started. And then I sold the business again. I got really burned out of dealing with inventory. It wasn't my thing. I moved the entire family to Spain for 2 years, and that's where I wrote Unstoppable Teams. And when I came back, I started writing Unstoppable Mindset, and Unstoppable Mindset comes out on April 23rd. And you, because you asked the first question, get the 1 copy that I have. That was my gift. So come see me when I'm signing. Another question. That was a great question. Very thoughtful question. Are they ever disclosed? Are just-in-case levers ever disclosed? That's pretty kind of personal. I don't think there's a reason not to. Like, I think I showed them to my mom and dad, and my dad's like, I don't want to see this stuff. I'll tell you, sometimes I actually give a talk on writing a just-in-case letter, and when you go through it, in the beginning you think like, oh, this is about bequeathing things. First couple of paragraphs, like, hey, you can have my Jeep with 39 car payments left on it. Because I didn't have much. Like, I had a dive watch, a couple bags of gear, and a Jeep with 39 payments on it. And then you get to regrets, right? And then you get to what you're really thankful for, where the gratitude is. And that's the meetup, is what I found. And I think, I didn't see Neil's, but I think that's what most guys go through, is you start writing and then you start getting to the core of, wow, how lucky am I that I got to be here, to do something and died doing something I loved. That's how they ended. Thanks for the question. Another question. I told you I'd take anything. Yeah. Did I ever think about going back to being an instructor? I was in SEAL team for 7 years. I went into business school. I came out of business school, and I'm like, what have I done? I can't be a civilian. That was 98 to 2000. I went right back in as in the reserves, picked up lieutenant commander, and it was during that time period that I started my little fitness adventure. By the way, I had 2 failed businesses before Perfect Push-Up came out. Perfect Push-Up came out. I had 3 times within 30 days of looking at bankruptcy. Once you get to that level, you're not going in as an instructor. You're going to go in and work in a forward operating base. There were opportunities to be an instructor, but quite frankly, no one really wanted to be the instructor. They wanted to go operate. Typically, when you go back there, you're, hey, it's time for you and your wife to reconnect. If you want to have a baby, that's the time to do it. You're injured. You're going to go to Buds for a little while because everybody wants to get back down range. They want to be with the team. Thanks for the question. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever go back and take any classes after you?
No. No, I didn't. You know what I did do is I took my son's water polo team. I called up a favor, and I was like, hey, could I bring the water polo team over because we had a tournament down here and this was my number 2 son. And we got over to the compound, and I think I started getting PTSD because I hadn't been back since then. And they were in the middle of Hell Week. And the kids were up on the berm, and they got up on the berm and like, nobody say anything, is what I was telling the kids. And, you know, I can tell you right now, it's every bit as hard. And I'd probably say harder than what I went through. Makes you proud. It's an impressive experience.
My brother rang the bell in '93.
Yeah. Well, how's he doing? Yeah. It's a hard process to get over on that. But, you know, God bless him for even trying. Thanks for sharing that. Anyway? Who's asked that? Right there. Are any of my boys interested in being a SEAL? Funny you asked that. I have one who is he's playing water polo right now at USC, and I just saw him over the weekend, and he said, "Hey, Dad, so do you think I could do SEAL team after USC?" I'm like, "You think so?" Absolutely. But if you were to come to my house, you'd have to really find a kind of I love me wall because it's not out there. I got a couple little pieces of memorabilia hidden in my office, but I really have not wanted to put that pressure. I've seen what's happened when a parent puts pressure on a kid, like, you're the 3rd generation Naval Academy. I mean, you and I have seen that. And sometimes it ended horribly because the kid just didn't, that wasn't their track. It wasn't where they meant to be. And I think for anybody who's a parent, who's got a child, who's thinking about going into the forces, it is an amazing experience. It's not for everybody. And what the strides that we have made and the opportunities are incredible. But it's still a big bureaucracy. You know, I had to remind Charlie, like, hey, Charlie, yeah, SEAL team's really cool, but you're still in the military. You're going to have to make your bed, Charlie. What? Oh. I'm a big supporter of that. I read a lot of recommendations for kids to go to the Naval Academy, Air Force, even West Point, begrudgingly. We love West Point. Yes, ma'am.
You're a good speaker.
I'm a good speaker?
You're a good speaker.
Thank you.
Is it something you have naturally, or is it something you had to learn and hone and maybe take lessons? Or?
Yes, yes, yes. You know, it didn't show up today because we weren't going to I couldn't go a deep dive in mindset, but one of the things in mindset, I'll talk about positivity. And I'll ask the audience, hey, has anybody done 23andMe? Hands will go up. Oh, yeah, I did. I'm like, oh, great. Did you get the positivity gene? Because it's right below the leadership gene and above the success gene, right? That's the same thing I would say about speaking. Oh, did you get the speaking gene? No. Now, John and I were fortunate because in the roles in the military, you have to stand up and deliver. That doesn't mean you're going to be impersonating people, but I wanted to create an experience where people could be in the water with me. Acting class, improv class, singing class. Like, I don't see this as a destination. I joined different artist clubs to help continue to convey the communication style. I like it, right? I geek out on it. And at the same time, I really work hard. And, you know, I'm going to pick on Josh Levine. Is he here right now? Great talk. You just fired me up. You remind me of my chief design officer. He worked at IDEO, and I recruited him from IDEO. He was a professor at CCA in industrial design, California College of Arts. And he kind of really reminds me of Josh, because Josh would say, as he said up here earlier today, he's like, hey, you have to go look left and right. You got to go look in different industries. And that's what my head of design, Ian, would say all the time. And when it came time to becoming a better speaker and like, hey, I think I'm going to make this part of my profession, you got to go look in different areas and play in different places. I even tried ballet. I'm not good at it. But there's your question. Yeah. What else? Anybody? I know. Where is it? I can't see it. Oh, yes, sir.
What are the best kind of team building exercises?
Oh, the ones that work. What kind of team building exercise are you looking for? Like what's going on with the team? Is the first question, right? If I were to say there was one de facto team building exercise I would do a swim buddy program. The swim buddy program literally means I am going to link you up with somebody else that is a complete opposite to you. In SEAL team, when you go through training, at some point they give you a swim buddy. When you end up getting a swim buddy, and swim buddy is there, thick and thin. It is our smallest team in SEAL team. We go from an 85%, 80% dropout rate. You get your swim buddy, 90% success rate. And one of the things I would do for team building is like, okay, I'm going to swim buddy you up for a week. I want you to tell me everything about this person, not just for a day, but for that week. And then you're going to rotate people through a swim buddy program. If you're looking for me to be like, hey, what's the ropes course I should do? I wouldn't know that. Right? Maybe I'd give you a log. I did. My first company that I joined outside of out of the military, I was the head of business development, and my VP of sales was like, hey, Alden, let's do surf torture. And it was in San Francisco Bay. And I lined everybody up. I'm like, okay, we're going to do some cold water training. And I got them in the water. And one of the persons nearly went into shock. So don't do that. It was a bad experience. And then the guy came over to me and said, oh, no, we can't do this anymore. You're the one who said you wanted to do it. But you can come see me afterwards. And you can also go to my website. I put everything out there. Twice a month I give an article. It's always on the 3 levels of leadership. Right now I'm working on culture. That's a series I'm doing. Anyone else? Hey, we're doing good, folks, because that bar is calling. I know it. Okay, going once, going twice. Anybody wants a book? I'll sign it for you. I'll see you over there.